Good evening, students. We are about starting our lecture on the second semester of the first year. I've been given an important system which is very important for human survival, and the system is called the respiratory system. I'll be going into reviewing the anatomy of the respiratory system. That has been our first lecture, and I expect that at the end of this lecture, you should be able to define what respiratory system is. Not only that, you should equally be able to categorize the system into two. That one that's found at the upper part and those ones that are found at the lower part. And briefly, you should be able to define or describe briefly the structures that come together to form the system you're talking about. At the end of it all, you will be able to appreciate the journey from the nose, that is the journey of the air, how it travels through the nose to terminate at the lungs, the two lungs. So we are reviewing. There is what we've done before. And so I may not be able to go into detail, but you should know what and what forms that system. The respiratory system is a system that deals with the exchange of gases. And namely, when we talk about the gases, here specifically, I'm talking about the exchange of carbon dioxide to be replaced by oxygen. Oxygen is in the atmosphere. That's what the body requires. Carbon dioxide is a product released by the body. And until we have a successful exchange, bring in oxygen and take out carbon dioxide. So that system that deals with this exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide, is what we are referring to generally to stand for respiratory system. The system is divided into two parts. Respiratory system is divided into two parts, or classified into two parts. Because most of the organs, they are found in the upper part, and some of the organs, they are found in the lower part. So those organs that are found at the upper part is what we're referring to as the upper respiratory tract. And when anybody asks you to mention the organs that are found at the upper respiratory tract, we'll let you know soon. The second part of the respiratory that's referred to as the lower respiratory tract They are there equally. So let me pick them one after the other. The upper respiratory tract. These ones are made up of 1, the nose, 2, the mouth. And some people thinking is the mouth part of respiratory system. Partly, you can breathe through your mouth. Because of these conditions where the nose is obstructed, you open your mouth to survive. And by the time you open your mouth, air will still be passing through the mouth. So here I'm saying that the nose, the mouth, the pharynx, epiglottis, the larynx, and the trachea. Those organs forms the upper respiratory tract. I'll start with the nose. From outside inward, the first structure that I'm touching my nose as I'm touching. And the nose is divided into 2 portions. The right side and the left side. The organ that divides the nostrils or the nose into 2 is called the septum. Septum is spelled S-E-P-T-U-M. So it is the septum that divides the nostrils into what we call nares. Nares is N-A-R-E-S. I'm adding S there because the nostril, that cavity, the nasal cavity is divided into 2 portions. The inner cavity of each nares. So don't bother yourself again and say which one is nares. Nares is part of the cavity created by the septum. So when you say the inner part of it, it has some projections. And that projections is what I will be referring to as the turbinates. Turbinates is spelled T-U-R-B-I-N-A-T-E. So at the inner part of the nares, each nares, there are about 3 projections. Those 3 projections divide each of the cavities into 3 parts or 2 parts. The function of those nares, in fact, it increases the surface area of the nasal cavity. And the function of it is to warm the air and to equally moisten the air. So the air that you breathe through the nose, by the time you reach these turbinated projections, the function of it increases the surface area of the nasal cavity. And the function of this nasal areas that will increase is to make sure the air you are breathing in is first of all moistened. It is being warmed. Some books will tell you that it humidifies the air. So the 2 cavities there, the nares. Nares has projections inside it. Each of the projections, you call them turbinates, turbinated. And the function of it is to make sure that the air you are breathing in is being moistened, is being humidified, and it is being warmed. After this nasal cavity, the nasal cavity leads to another opening. That opening Most of the times I refer to it as a common junction. I didn't teach you the digestive system. If not, the common junction you're talking about is what we call the pharynx. And pharynx alone contains the opening from the air. One. Opening from the two nasal cavities, there is. Opening from the two ears. He has an opening that is going into the esophagus. An opening that goes into the respiratory system, into the trachea. If anybody asks you, how many openings that opens into the pharynx, tell that person you have 7 openings. 2 from the ear, from the nose, 1 from the mouth, 1 plus 2 equals to 3. 2 from the 2 ears, because 1 ear by the right hand side, the other one is by the left hand side. So 2 plus 3, 5. An opening going to the esophagus, because you need to eat food, you drink water. That thing goes through the esophagus. The opening is from the pharynx. Then one other, that is 1 plus 1, 2, 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 2, 6. Then we have 1 opening that's going into the respiratory tract. So anatomically, when anybody asks you, how many openings opens into the pharynx, tell that person we have 7 openings. And I've told you how those 7 openings and where they come from. 1 from the mouth, 2 from the nose, another 2 from the ear, 1 going to the esophagus, 1 going to the respiratory system. And by the time you tell whoever asks you, you say yes. This student knows anatomy. The pharynx, they're about divided into 3 parts. The pharynx. The pharynx itself, as I've said, is a tubular passage which is subdivided into 3. The first one, we call it nasopharynx. Nasopharynx is that portion that is towards the 2 nasal cavities. We have the oropharynx. Oropharynx is that portion that tilts to the side of the mouth. And number 3, you have laryngopharynx, that portion that tilts to the side of the larynx. The function of the nose, as I've said, is to warm, to humidify the air. That is the air we breathe in. We need to be very careful. Because of this common opening, an infection of the mouth or infection of the nose can spread to the ear. If you have a common cold, after causing pharyngitis for inflammation is inflammation of the pharynx. That inflammation of the pharynx can extend and affect the ear. Last week you saw pharyngitis, you are coughing, and today you started feeling pain in your 2 ears. That pain could be as a result of what I'm referring to as the otitis media. Otitis media is inflammation of the middle ear. That middle ear is being inflamed because there's opening between the middle ear that appears within the throat. Because the 2 openings from the middle ear, they all opens to the pharynx. So infection can travel either to the ear, or you suffer otitis media now, and tomorrow we have pharyngitis. So because of that channel of communication, because of these two openings, the air passes through the nasopharynx, oropharynx to laryngopharynx, then passes through the epiglottis. Epiglottis is just a flash of tissue. That flash of tissue is found behind the tongue. You see, the opening to the trachea is only meant to convey air, not to convey another thing. And so that opening has to be safeguarded, to be closed, especially when one comes to eat, when we want to swallow food, we want to swallow water. If you want to swallow water, it is the duty of the epiglottis to go and close the larynx. Because larynx is supposed to be the beginning of the trachea. Since it's not meant to contain any water, it's not meant to take anything solid. So anytime you or somebody want to swallow something, that tissue that we're referring to as the epiglottis has to cover that opening. It's covering that opening because we want to disallow anything entering into the trachea. So some of us that have diarrhea of the mouth, you'll be eating and then you'll be talking. When you are eating and then you are talking, as you are talking, the epiglottis must leave the opening because we have structure called epiglottis and we have a structure that is called glottis. In fact, glottis is an opening, and that opening is very important because that's the one that produces the vocal cords. It's the one that produces sound as I'm talking now, as I'm lecturing you. The glottis is open, it's the one that is vibrating. Without the vibration of the glottis, as I'm talking, you will not hear. And so those who love as they're eating, they'll be talking, which means that as you are talking, the air has to be moving in and out of the glottis. And that is why when you are eating, you should not be talking. When you are eating, you should not be talking. As you are eating, the substances that don't want them to go into the trachea, some will slip in pieces into the trachea. And that's why sometimes you cough. Coughing is a reflex action. You are reflecting that because if water wants to go into that region, no. You are coughing because you want the water to come out. It's a reflex action. It's a defense mechanism. So, epiglottis, don't take it to be a flap of tissue that covers that region where air is supposed to pass through. Because as you are swallowing, if it remain open, the food will go into the wrong direction. And to prevent food from going to the wrong direction, it is duty of epiglottis to cover that gate. Cover the gate that I'm not using. That's just the essence. Glottis is just an opening. It's just a structure they can touch. An opening that allows the air to enter into the trachea, in and out. As I'm talking now, my glottis is opening and closing. Anytime I keep quiet, it will close. Anytime I'm talking, it will open. So the vibration of the glottis is what is producing the sound. So, but the two of them, they play an important part in making sure that food and water do not enter into a wrong route. You know it's going to be a tug of war. If food enter into the trachea, God forbid, or if water enters into the trachea. Because water can easily enter there. Water can easily enter there, food can equally enter there. But the way the anatomy of the body is structured, it made in such a way that anything that's not meant to enter into the airway must not go there. And that's why you have this epiglottis. I call it a flap. Flap are meant to cover an opening. And you can only cover that opening when one wants to swallow food or when one wants to swallow water. The vocal cords are located within the larynx. And the opening I'm referred to as the glottis is within the larynx. So glottis is the opening between the vocal cords through which the air passes through to reach the trachea. The trachea itself. Anatomically, trachea is about 10 to 12 centimeters in length. And in diameter, it's about 1.5 to 2.5 centimeters in diameter. The entire length of trachea, as I've said, is made up of either C-shaped cartilages or U-shaped cartilages. But it is arranged in such a way that anytime somebody wants to swallow food, you know, the trachea is formed behind the esophagus. So that anytime one wants to swallow, it expands. The esophagus expands. And that's why it is not totally made up of cartilage that is ring-shaped. No. I say it is either C-shaped or U-shaped. That place that is not complete, this thing, that is the portion where the esophagus expands, so that the esophagus is given the allowance at least to expand anytime the thing wants to expand. And I've told you, the esophagus can only expand when one wants to swallow food. If you are not swallowing anything, it will just be there. Because whatever is the amount of food you caught in your hand, you can swallow it. As you are swallowing it, the thing first of all to expand. So the trachea has to give allowance, room for the esophagus to be able to constrict and expand. As I've said, trachea is about 10 to 12 centimeters long and 1.5 to 2.5 centimeters in diameter. The entire length of trachea is made up of U or C-shaped cartilages that keeps the trachea patent. The meaning of patent is open. If not because of the cartilages, the trachea will be collapsed. And anybody having a collapsed trachea, it means that the air cannot go in freely. So that is the work of nature. We thank God we have the C-shaped structures or the U-shaped structures that are made of cartilages that make the pancreas to remain open. The trachea bifurcates. The meaning of bifurcation is it divides. After the division of the trachea into right and left, the name ceases from trachea to be called something different. And we are about entering into the lower respiratory tract. Because we have what is called bronchi. Bronchi is plural. Bronchos Bronchus is plural. If it's one, you say bronchus. Trachea is part of the structures of the upper respiratory system, and it is a continuation of the larynx proper. And I told you before, the larynx proper is the one that contains the voice cord. And that opening in between this voice cord is what I call the glottis. Glottis is not a structure, but glottis is an opening. That is the opening that enables one that is talking to be heard by the second party. As I'm talking now, you've been hearing me. That is made possible because of my voice cord. And it is because the voice cord has an opening, and that opening, as I've said, is the one that is called the glottis. Trachea is a tube which measures about 10 to 12 centimeters in length. That is the longness. The diameter, wideness, is about 1.5 to 2.5 cm in diameter. The entire length of trachea is made up of cartilages. Cartilages are forms of connective tissue, if I'm not forgotten, during the first semester. When I taught you tissues, I told you that the examples of connective tissue, there are very many in the body. Blood is one of them, and cartilage is another thing. But I classified those cartilages to be in three. Some are very solid, some semi-solid. The cartilages are semi-solid because you can bend them. You can bend. So, trachea is made up of rings of cartilages that are either C-shaped or U-shaped. There is sort of relationship between esophagus and cartilages because they all exist perpendicular to each other, parallel to each other. And so, the cartilage must give a room to the esophagus to expand. The esophagus has to expand because when you come to swallow food, it all depends on the size of the food that you cut. Whatever is the size of the food, once the thing can enter your mouth, I assure you, it will go through the esophagus. And by the time any food is going through esophagus, which means the esophagus has to expand. And that's why the C-shaped cartilages or U-shaped cartilages they're providing room for the expansion of the esophagus, especially when you come to swallow food or you swallow water. Just before entering into the lower respiratory tract, in fact, that's supposed to be the beginning of the lower respiratory tract, the trachea bifurcates. The meaning of bifurcation is they divide. Trachea divided into two portions. The right bronchus, the left bronchus. Mathematically, one bronchus plus another bronchus is equal to bronchi. So anatomically, bronchi is plural. Bronchus is singular. So in mathematics, there's mathematics everywhere. That's why I say bronchus plus another bronchus is equal to bronchi. And bronchi is spelled B-R-O-N-C-H-I. Bronchi. That is plural. Bronchus is spelled B-R-O-N-C-H-U-S. singular. If it's one, call it bronchus. If there are two, call them bronchi. The portion where the trachea divides into two is a region, very sensitive region, very, very sensitive. You call that area carina. The spelling of carina is C-A-R-I-N-A, carina. I said that portion is a very sensitive portion because if one is functioning, you may be using suction machine to get rid of the excessive production from the respiratory tract. That place is too sensitive and one can enter into vigorous cough through reflex action. Vigorous cough because of its sensitivity. I've just finished talking about the upper respiratory tract, which begins from the nose through the nares, through the nasopharynx, through the pharynx proper, through the laryngopharynx, and into the larynx proper, where you have the vocal cords located. And within the vocal cords, we talk about the opening, which we call the glottis. I could talk about epiglottis, which is just a flap that covers that opening where anytime somebody is eating or when we are swallowing. And I'm going into talking about the trachea itself. I think that's the longest tube within the respiratory system. The longest tube, the trachea, which I say measured about 10 to 12 centimeter, and in diameter, I say about 1.5 to 2.5. And finally there I told you the trachea has to bifurcate. And I told you the meaning of bifurcation is divides. The trachea divided into two portions to give us two structures that we are calling the bronchi, which I say it is plural. If you want to refer to one of them, you call them bronchus. But the most important thing for you to realize is the region where the trachea divided into two, we refer to that place as carina, and I say it's a very sensitive portion. And anything happening to it, one can go into a very vigorous cough. So we are entering into lower respiratory tract. The lower respiratory tract consists of the bronchi, the bronchioles, the alveolar ducts, and the alveoli. Sometimes we refer to them as the alveolar sacs. With the exception of the right and the left bronchi, all other structures of the lower respiratory tract, they are embedded, they are hidden inside the lung. That tells you the importance of the lung. Apart from the two bronchi that you can see outside, any other structure of the lower respiratory tract, I said they are hidden inside the lung. I know we have two lungs. One in the right hand side, the other one is in the left hand side. So if you want to talk about the bronchioles, we want to talk about the alveolars that we are referring to as the alveolar sacs. All of them, they are hidden inside each of these lungs. Let me briefly talk about the lung first before I go ahead with the tract itself. The lung, they are very spongy. And each of these lungs, they are divided into lobes or lobes. Right lung alone is divided into 3 lobes. The left lung is divided into 2 lobes. You can press them as if somebody is pressing a ball. Or that structure you call a sarankobo. You keep on pressing until it can break. But you can press the lungs because they are very soft. They just look like sponge, and they are not sponge. They are structures of part of the structures of the respiratory system. As I've said, each lung is divided into lobes. The right side lobe is divided into 3 lobes, and the left hand side lung is divided into 2 lobes. Let's go on with the tract. After the bronchi is the bronchioles. The spelling of bronchioles is B-R-O-N-C-H-I-O-L-E. Bronchioles. The sub-branches of the bronchioles is what gives us the alveoli or alveolus. Alveoli plural is ending with Li, plural. Alveolus, we want to refer to only one. And at the terminal end of this alveolus, there are sacs, just like bulbs. The sacs are equally made up of smooth muscles. Smooth muscles that are permeable to the entrance or to allow oxygen to pass through it. Because in diffusion, we talk about movement of substances from area of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. That air coming from through the nose, you have high concentration of oxygen. And by the time it crosses the membrane and enter into the blood, the concentration of oxygen at the capillary level is very low. So it is easier for oxygen to diffuse through that membrane to enter into the bloodstream. Equally, at the level of blood, because after using oxygen in the body, the end product of oxygen is carbon dioxide. There's very high concentration of carbon dioxide within the bloodstream. And so it's going to be easier for carbon dioxide to diffuse through the membrane and appear within the lungs. So the actual exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place within these alveolus or alveolar sacs. Oxygen go in, carbon dioxide come out. And I believe the person teaching you people cardiovascular system will tell you in total how oxygen is being conveyed by the blood from the lungs to the body tissues, and how carbon dioxide is being carried by the blood from the body tissues back into the lungs. But me, I won't forget, when I was teaching you the introduction to anatomy and physiology, I told you that red blood cell contains hemoglobin. It is hemoglobin that carries the oxygen. Hemoglobin combined with oxygen, the name changes to oxyhemoglobin. Apart from that, the red blood cell equally contains carbonic anhydrase. Where hemoglobin has high affinity for oxygen, the carbonic anhydrase has high affinity for carbon dioxide. So where hemoglobin is picking oxygen, carbonic anhydrase is equally picking carbon dioxide. But it can only pick carbon dioxide, bring them out. And hemoglobin pick oxygen, take them in. because the body tissues need oxygen. Since you don't require any carbon dioxide, it is duty of carbonic anhydrate to pick carbon dioxide from the body tissues out of the body through the lungs. Students, for the past few minutes, I've been talking about the upper and lower respiratory tracts. But I want to tell you a difference between, or differences between the right bronchus and the left bronchus. Anatomically, the right bronchus is shorter in length. It's shorter in length, and equally it is wider. It's short and wide than the left bronchus. The right bronchus equally is more straight. More straight. When you look at the position anatomically, when you check your textbooks, it's more straight, it's not bent. The left one is slanted, but the right one goes in straight, but looks bigger and wider than the left bronchus. That's why it is easier. If you want to aspirate, the meaning of aspiration is bringing out contents, excess contents out of the respiratory system. It will be easier if the tube that's being passed is passed through into the right bronchus. But be careful, because of the sensitivity of the carina, so that you don't put the patient into a very vigorous cough. As I've said, the right bronchus is more shorter and wider and more straight than the left. One thing that you must not forget about each bronchus is that, just like a tree, from bronchus it becomes bronchioles, which means the bronchus subdivide. Where trachea divide into bronchus, the bronchus subdivide itself into what I'm referring to as the bronchioles. The bronchioles will subdivide to give rise to the structures that we call the alveoli. It's the alveoli that end up with alveolar sacs. So as I've said, for the past 20 minutes or so, I've been reviewing the anatomy and physiology of the respiratory system, whether you're a male or female. Structures are similar. Similar in the sense that if men has male respiratory system, female equally have their own respiratory system, because all of us will need the air. And air can only enter into the body through the respiratory system. So whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. All of us will require a respiratory system. And the organs have listed that forms the upper respiratory system. Don't play with them. Nose, that give rise to nares. Nares that opens into the pharynx. And pharynx alone divided into three portions. The nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. So from the laryngopharynx, we are taking the root or the tract of the respiratory. You are leaving the common junction, which I call the pharynx. And there, we start with the pharynx proper. Pharynx proper is the one that contains the vocal cord. Vocal cord is the one that is producing the sound that you are hearing. As I'm talking, you are not hearing me. So that opening alone within the larynx is what you call the glottis. Glottis is not a structure, but glottis is an opening. Epiglottis is a structure, and what does it do? It forms a slab over the opening, so that when one is swallowing, you prevent food from entering into a wrong route. So I've said, I've reviewed that anatomy, and when next we meet, I'll be going to the beginning of the disorder of the respiratory system. And God's grace, I'll be starting on the assessment of patients that suffers respiratory disorder. So next week will be another day. Call it a day. Thank you.